Hi, this is Scott Henderson. You're watching the Guitar Mania channel.
Hi, this is Jeff Berlin. I'm watching Scott Henderson say hi. This is Scott Henderson. You're watching the Guitar Mania channel.
It's good to see you guys in Austria, the hometown and native town of Joe Zawinul, and I understand, Scott, you played a long time with Joe. What do you remember from playing with Joe?
Mainly comedy, to tell you the truth. I mean, it was a really funny. Joe could have easily been a stand-up comedian. He was a funny guy, and not as serious as people make him out to be. He was a fun-loving kind of guy, and of course, just getting here and play every night was amazing. Yeah, it was. I think I learned more just from listening to him than anything else, because he wasn't a talker so much about what he was doing musically. He was more organic. You just hear things in his head and play them, and not really talk about them. So
right, and that's also how he conveyed what he wanted you to play.
Well, no, he was more articulate about that. But if you asked him what he was playing, he would say, "No clue. I'm just doing what I hear."
Right.
So he wasn't the kind of a guy you could really learn from in a kind of scientific way. He was way more artistic.
Talking about communication between musicians, Jeff, how do you guys communicate in the trio? You've played now for how many years together? Do you still?
When Scott says this, he's communicated that he wants me to turn down the bass. So we communicate very well. Scott and I have always had a good listening relationship. And in fact, it might be one of the best I've ever had, because we're good at listening, responding, leaving space. There's an unspoken agreement between us that just organically developed. And quite frankly, I'm almost convinced we could do an album of things where great parts of it are just us talking between bass and guitar, let's say. It's very unique because things happen. You cannot write music this way. You can't plan music this way. And so much of it is just right now and on the spot. So that's very special for me, because I like that. In fact, maybe I sometimes think, I play too much because I like to play a lot, so I have to hold back, because really it's generally dominated guitar. It has to be harmony and melody. But the interplay is maybe almost like nothing like it. And it's because Scott permits it, because guitar players want bass players most of the time, and reasonably, to play simple and roots. But sometimes, because he allows it and enjoys it, we do other things that are not predictable.
You're taking the bass playing really from just playing the basis of music to, you turned it into a lead instrument as well. When you took up bass playing, was that something that you wanted to do in the first place, to make it a lead instrument?
From the very first day that I got a bass guitar, I wanted to do that. The first thing I tried on my bass, I remember this actually, is I was a violin student and I tried a Bach violin concerto in D minor that I had played. So, and I was already becoming unpopular with musicians in my town who wanted a bass player. And I was not like that. And it took me a good 35 years to finally learn that I have to provide a root and enjoy doing that. But my inspiration was forever to just do something that is not usual. But it got in the way of guys like him, let's say. Even the other day we were talking about giant steps, and he said, I need a root. And I have to be reminded of that sometimes. Because my spirit is sometimes, unless I'm doing a commercial gig and you have to play, if I'm told what to play, I'll play it. But
can you please tell us a bit about the recording of the HBC album that you did? How long did it take you to put down?
It took me a couple of months to put everything together after we did the basic tracks. We did the basic tracks in a day. Because it was just like playing another gig. We've been playing this music on the road, so we just went into the studio. We took one day to get sounds, and the next day we played all the music. It was that simple. But for me, I wanted to make the tunes sound just more orchestral, like the records. you know, we do a lot of Weather Report stuff and Herbie Hancock music or whatever, and we do a trio, and it is what it is because it's a live situation. But those songs on the record, they're huge sounding because there's just dozens of keyboard parts and stuff like that. And I wanted to do justice to those songs just coming from a guitar standpoint. Mm-hmm. So I did the same exact thing that those keyboard players did, only with guitar, layering.
Yeah, I think you did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Just capturing really the nuances and details.
Well, out of respect for the guys, because we're big fans of the people that we covered, you know what I mean? And I just, out of respect for their music, I just wanted to get it right, you know, I mean, obviously, I can't make a sound like a synthesizer, but with all my arsenal of pedals and effects and stuff, I got as close as I could get.
Right. Apparently, they didn't want really to compose for that album and write new tunes.
That's a big problem with composition. Composition is probably the hardest thing in our business. You know, this is a vacation to be like compared to composing. All we have to do is ride around the van and show up and play. It's easy. Composing, you have to sit there in your room and hate yourself for weeks and weeks and weeks. You know, it's because I'm not a musical genius like Zawinul, who could just sit there and improvise for 5 minutes and then you have Birdland. You know, it takes me time. I have to go through the process of, most musicians have to go through the process of elimination to get to the parts that they want. Even Beethoven, you know, he went da 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 da, nah, da 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 da, nah, da 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 da. Oh, that's pretty good. Let's try that. You know what I mean? I mean, most musicians are like that. They have to go through stuff they don't like, and a lot of it sometimes. So you could write for days, even weeks, and not.
Is it the same with you, Jeff?
Yes, it's exactly the same with me because I'm not a natural composer. Where certain guys, you mentioned Joe, Wayne Shorter, you know, these are what I would call jock orchestrists, were naturally in their DNA capable of composition, and because I wanted to be like them, I would enter into their area of expertise, but always at a lower level. So everything I did was sort of forced. I'd say I've written a lot of music in my life, just alone. I've never had I wish I had the luxury of a colleague, like, because I know that Scott also, he writes alone, but he had his band and they would write together. And for me, it was, I had to say yes, no, maybe, yes, put this with that, put that with this. And he mirrors exactly my sentiments. Writing for me, and maybe for us, is exhausting. Because I'll finish a tune and go back and decide it's still not good enough. And then I'll put it out or do something with it and then later say, why didn't I do that?
I mean, don't you think it's just also because, I mean, you guys are so famous and people have such huge expectations on you that you're more critical than you should be, perhaps?
No, I'm not too critical. We just know when it sucks and when it doesn't.
He's right. We know when it doesn't sound, well, our ears are good enough to hear in our own music and know when we produce something that probably is not that good.
I don't have any false humility. I mean, I can listen to one of my tunes and go, yeah, that's a great tune. I also have tunes that aren't. So it's like, I just kind of know. But the reason I think, the reason you're asking your question is why aren't we playing original music in this band is just because Jeff is busy writing music for his own group. I'm busy writing music for my trio. Where my original music is featured. So we decided to do this band as a cover band, and just like a traditional jazz band would go out and play standards, play All the Things You Are, play you know, There Is No Greater Love, you know, just like what some of those guys do. For us, these tunes that we're playing are our standards,
right?
Because we're from a younger generation. We're also playing some old standards too.
Yeah.
But there was just no time for us to write original music for this project. So, but we enjoy what we do because we get to play our versions of these great tunes, and it's fun to get away from your own music and play something else, something different. Because I'm playing my music all year, I get sick of my own tunes. So it's fun to play some Weather Report and the music that I grew up listening to.
And Scott and I have a joke about that the reason we like our record so much is because we didn't write any music for it.
Yeah, we say it's the best record we ever did in our careers because we didn't write anything.
We didn't write anything.
Jeff, you just recently released your record Low Standards with drummer Mike Clark, I understand.
Yes.
And can you please tell us more about it? I mean, how long did it take you to record your last solo album?
2 days. And every record that I do, I celebrate it. Because for me, I'm on a gentle upward curve, and I'm speaking for Scott now too, that the last record we ever do, we learn from it, so that the next record, we'll do it better. Mm-hmm. So this new record, it's a standards record, speaking of Scott mentioning standards, but I chose standards that are not the typical standards. I chose more obscure Wayne Shorter tunes. I chose one we played together, Fee Fi Fo Fum, and Carla Bley, and Oscar Nelson. I picked some odd tunes. And I used Richard Drexler, who's the pianist and the upright bass player. And most of the tunes are Richard on upright, and I'm playing hopefully as close to a Scott Henderson type of approach, where I'm trying to play chords and guide tone lines and the things that he plays that amaze me all the time. Mm-hmm. So I listen to Scott, and I'm influenced by him to try these things. And among the soup of all my influences, this record came out really maybe my favorite, because Richard played the low F and I played this funny chord and moving lines on top. It goes with your thing about my playing a lead bass. Mm. So in that respect, I'm very happy with Low Standards. I think it really, for me, it might be the most different bass record, maybe almost at any time, because it's simply all on me for the harmony, completely. Richard plays the bass. I play a bass guitar, but like a Scott Henderson or Herbie or somebody, and I'm happy with the result of it.
But it's an interesting band he has because of that keyboard player who also plays upright bass. He can play upright bass, and Jeff can be the piano player, right. And then Jeff can play bass, and he goes on acoustic piano, and he's actually a very good acoustic piano player. Yeah. So it's a pretty versatile band in that way, kind of a changing roles band. It's kind of cool.
I guess that's great. We interviewed Mike Canali, and when he was on tour with Jose Triani, and it was amazing. He swapped between guitar and switched from guitar to piano and back and forth. And
I was a big Gentle Giant fan. I mean, you know, those guys. I mean, each one of them played like 6 or 7 instruments. Well, you know.
Do you play any other instruments?
I play a little piano and bad drums.
Well, you've got the not so bad drummer with you this time.
Yeah.
We're trying to break him into the music business.
Well, you will be very grateful for you guys. Scott, one of the big mysteries and the talk amongst guitarists is always, and this is where we turn to a bit to equipment question, what overdrive you use. I mean, you're still doing advertisement for Maxon?
Oh yeah, SD9. Yeah, that's my main thing. Not so much in this band. That's more of a Tribal Tech pedal. This band is more of the RC Booster, exotic RC Booster, because I have to play chords a lot. You know, in Tribal Tech, I'm a saxophone player. I mean, we've got Kinsey playing all the chords, right? So I'm just pretty much the single line instrument, and it's more coming from that. But in this band, I have to be able to turn down my guitar to play chords, and I don't use channel switching on amps. I don't like a clean sound. All my chords have a little bit of distortion in them, because I find that makes it, compresses it, and even though the chords are a little bit distorted, the notes are even, nothing pops out, you know what I mean? I would need compressors and stuff like that if I was going to play totally clean. I can turn my guitar down to about 4 and get a relatively clean sound, clean enough. You know, like Schofield, you know, his sound is never clean, totally clean. It's always got a little bit of dirt in it. And that helps the chords to remain nice and even. No notes pop out when I play with my fingers. So that's why I use that boost pedal rather than a full-on distortion pedal.
Right. Do you have your amps with you this time?
This time I have them when we're in the van. Yeah, I have a Serve custom audio amp, and I have a duplicate of my cabinet at home here with me in Europe. But when I fly, I have to use rented Marshalls. I usually use like a JCM 2000 and Marshall cabinets.
So you're more looking after the 34 tone.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Jeff, what about your weapons of choice?
Mark bass forever and ever will be my first choice in amplifier.
Have you caught up with the guys in Italy for Mark bass?
Not on this trip, But Mark Bass and I are very intimate because they know that I love their amps more than any other amp. Many years I didn't take an endorsement from other companies that were kind. They offered, would you like to try our amps? And everyone makes great amps. Mark Bass knows this too. But the distinction for me is tone. And these 15s that I play with my name on it, I didn't build it. I did nothing to it. I took the tweeter out. Mm-hmm. It's entirely a Marco Di Virgilio's innovation, and it's a great amp. So I use their amps whenever and wherever I can. I'll record with them, I'll play with them on jazz, rock, funk, any gig. Because now we have PA and monitors, so for me the tone is phenomenal. The best bass tone I ever heard. And weapon of choice, because again influenced by Scott, I noticed on the last several years when we play, when Scott got done playing a solo with huge tone and just ringing notes, then I did my solo, put the chorus on, and it went da 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 da. And I never could find, I felt it was a great letdown. So it's a long curve for me, but I got a compressor and I'm just starting to learn how to use the notes. Today I have a distortion pedal and Scott instantly said, why don't you use it this way? Because he's so experienced. So I never paid attention to tone in these pedal situations as much. But now I'm using these Mark Bass compressor because they make a phenomenal compressor, and a Mark Bass distortion pedal because my ear isn't sensitive to know if this distortion is better than that or that distortion is better than this. The tone I get is great. I cranked it up, I dialed in some tone, and if he said it sounds good, I'm satisfied. So Mark Bass amps, Mark Bass pedals, because they're a genius company. I'm not just saying this. And my chorus pedal, which I use. It's not a Mark Bass.
And in terms of your instruments, Scott, you're using
I use a
signature guitar.
Signature guitar, yeah.
And it's always the same, or you're using
pretty much always the same.
What do you say to people who say the more you play it, the more the instrument develops its own characteristics?
That's not true.
Like breaking in and
that's
stuff.
That's not true. No, that's all.
I mean, have you heard? I mean, the gigs
there's some things about gear that are true. Like for example, the difference between like an alkaline battery and a distortion pedal versus a carbon battery. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, that's just voodoo. That's something anybody can hear. It's not subtle at all. The screws aren't tightened a certain way on the back of a Marshall cabinet. It doesn't sound the same. Bullshit. It's voodoo. It's not true. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that are true and a lot of things that are wives' tales. You know what I mean? And the thing is that it's all in the fingers, really. I mean, Gary Willis had Jeff's very amps on tour with Tribal Tech for one gig. They didn't work for him because he plays in a completely different place on the instrument. He has just a completely different tone in his fingers. What works for him is an Aguilar amp. That's the only thing he can play. And it's the same with anybody. You might try my same pedal, my amp, but if you're playing a different style of guitar, it might not work. It's just, so you have to take everything people say about gear with a grain of salt, because just because it works for them doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. Everybody has to seek out their own tone according to how they play their instrument. And a lot of guitar players, I mean, they can play Fenders or Marshalls or whatever and it still sounds like them. I mean, Jeff played direct into the board on the album and I'd recognize him in a second. Because of his tone. It's the tone of his bass and the tone of his fingers, and there were no amps involved.
What about your bass? I mean, do you swap instruments a lot, or?
Well, I own 2 basses. I've never owned any more, and I only play one. I don't know why.
So much for gear acquiring syndrome.
I wish I was like you.
I only own 2 guitars, and so far my process works because I haven't broken any strings. I'm in trouble if I do, because I'll have to stop the show and Scott will have to play a solo while I frantically change his strings.
Which puts you in much difficulties.
But that's part of the fun of the slight unpredictability of it, because he plays thin strings and normally plays a heavier string anyway. He's playing a thinner string now because I can't detune. He's broken strings occasionally. Look up and I guess I got to do a bass solo or something. We won't stop a show for a broken string. But the 2 bass thing works for me, and I have only used one. But now I've actually left this company because this company are wonderful people, but they've never really supported me. So I went to Cort Guitars, which quite frankly are not a high-name bass company in the industry. And I thought, and we thought, maybe we could introduce Cort to, excuse me if I say it this way, my level of musician to the higher level of musicians, and maybe to newer players that want to play that, because I've never played a $5,000 guitar. Many of my colleagues have very well built and high expensive instruments. I never even was interested in that. I always wanted a good playing guitar that sounds good. And Cort has now built me one, so I'm going to go with them. And when I go with them, I'll have 2 Cort basses. Done. I don't own, I knew John Entwistle, and I heard he had close to 300 bass guitars. 300 bass.
How many guitars do you own, Scott?
About 20. But I mean, I need them because I have to layer, you know. And if I have to layer, you don't want one guitar sounding just like the other one. You know, I have Les Pauls, SGs, Stratocasters, or Sir Stratocasters. I have Dan Electro guitars. I have electric sitar, you know, stuff, baritone guitars, you know. So I have to be prepared for recordings.
Right.
So. And even the Sir guitars that I don't have a lot of them to try to be versatile, but because it seems like every one they make me just sounds better than the last one because they keep improving, you know. And now they have these things called roasted bodies and roasted necks. It takes more moisture out of the neck and the body, and it really does sound nice.
Does it make a difference?
It does, actually, yeah.
Okay.
It's nice. And then they have a new noiseless system that even sounds better than their previous one. So as they improve their instruments, and I'm getting new instruments from them, I'm not very sentimental about, you know, as soon as they make me one that sounds better than the one I was playing, that's the one I bring on the road. And
so you're not attached?
No, I don't get attached to guitars because in a year they might make one that sounds better than that one. So
if they feel good, we'll start from there. If it feels good, that might be what you talked about, that, you know, where you said the screws on the back,
right,
new instruments.
Well, it has to feel good. Yeah.
It's a simple case of feel. Then you go for tone, and if you got both, you have your guitar.
But there's that wives' tale again where, you know, guys think the whole trading thing of old Stratocasters, 50 Stratocasters, they're paying $25,000, $30,000 for these guitars because they think they sound good because they're old. It's voodoo. I mean, Hendrix played those guitars when they were brand new off the shelf from the music store, and he made them sound fine, right? So I don't think they sound any better now than they did when he was playing them.
What was the name again?
Yeah, that guy, Hendrix. Yeah.
First name, huh?
Yeah, I can't remember his first name.
Marvin Hendrix.
Scott, Jeff, one last question. You both are outstanding teachers as well. And I had the pleasure of attending one of your workshops at one stage. If you were to give one piece of advice to young aspiring musicians, what would that be?
Give up music and get a job, a real job. It's going to pay you some money.
I think we have to turn that off now.
No, I'm just kidding. I think really just keep your ears open and don't get involved in that real cliquey thing where music starts becoming more of a lifestyle than an art unto itself. Maybe this doesn't happen over here as much as it does in the States, but you know, we have these cliques of, like, say, not singling anybody out, but say heavy metal dudes, right? Who, if their friends ever caught them listening to Beyonce, they would never speak to them again. You know, there's these kind of cliques, right? And this is very dangerous. You know what I mean? Because you just don't want to, in this day and age, you need to be prepared for anything that people throw at you. If you want to make any money playing music, you can't just decide, I'm going to play this one style of music and only this style of music, unless you want to be poor all your life.
What would be the skills you as a guitarist you would say?
You need to have a good ear, a really good ear. I would disagree with Jeff, because Jeff's a big advocate of reading music. I am not. I don't think you need to learn how to read music. I think your ear is, most of the time in 90% of studio sessions, some guy walks over to you with acoustic guitar and says, this is the tune. You come up with some cool stuff to play over it. You know, that's what a studio session is in LA, right? So if you don't have a good ear and you're not inventive enough to come up with some nice guitar parts to play over this guy's very raw presentation of his song, you're going to be in trouble. So having a good ear and having an inventiveness and creativity is more important than reading in that type of studio work, which most kind of studio work is like that now. The days of reading along with an orchestra, those are kind of over.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, very rare. Very rare.
I mean, even for people on your level and
very
you,
rare.
Jeff, and
people use samples for that. People don't even use orchestras anymore. They use synthesizers, and my wife uses, what is that program for PC? It's huge. It's like, she wrote a film score one time and I was listening to it and there was no way I could tell that that was not a real orchestra because it's all samples. We even went to the screening and I thought, well, on the big speakers I'm going to be able to hear it. No way. No way. I could not tell that that wasn't a real orchestra, and it was a huge production. That's a sample program, you know. So.
What would be your advice for a young musician?
I'm kind of known as a pariah in music education. A lot of people don't like me in music education because I have the belief that most educators, not all, aren't qualified to teach. Now, Scott's right about the thing about the professional end of things, you know, that a guy with an acoustic guitar or that element is popular, or certainly the way that people work professionally. He's right about the ear. Scott is a product of, I would call the 90%, if not nearly the 100% self-taught musician. Everything he became, and everything guys like him became, are self-taught. Which proves that if you're dedicated and love it as much as Scott and me and other guys do, you're going to find something, hopefully, in music. Here's where I draw the line. If you pay money, simple as that, to get an education, you have to get what you paid for. I feel you don't. There's a lot of popular principles. People teach groove class for pay. People teach technique, whatever that word means, because everybody has technique. It means when you have technique problems, it only means that you don't know what notes to use with your technique. Nobody has hand problems. Nobody has finger problems. The way you solve these things is to put your hands on a guitar. And the best way to learn how to play guitar or bass or something is by using music to do it. Now, you could do the self-taught route, or when you pay to go to a Berkeley or an MI or a Lama or a school in Poland or the Players School of Music in Florida or any university or any school, and you pay money. The only thing that matters is that you come out of that institution a better player than when you went in, or at least knowledgeable about music. Because when I pay you to fix my car, you gotta fix it. I don't want to hear excuses. If I pay you to make me a dinner, you're a restaurant, you gotta prepare me a great meal. So the only criteria is if a student seeks out an education and pays for it, I don't think that most sources of music are giving students what they need. They're being entertained, they're paying for things that they probably don't need or won't get. And the only hardcore thing, if I want to learn Polish, the only thing I need to learn are the words. That's it. So I could learn it self-taught, hang out in Poland and teach myself, or if I pay you, you must give me what I paid to get. And that's really my own real position about education. If you learn reading is a fact, because people in my country, I'll shut up in a second, people in my country in Appalachia were poor, uneducated, couldn't read, and it happened during a time where the education was so low they barely functioned in the society. When education became more prominent, I think Victor Wooten mentioned that a language is learned by ear since you're a kid. Everybody that learned it by an ear since they're a kid went to school to learn how to read and write. Everybody. Everybody. And the only people that have a lower societal manner of living are people that haven't learned academically or raised themselves up via education in a large part. So that's my whole explanation. If anybody's watching this and you pay for an education, get only music. Don't get groove, don't get blues, don't get whatever, in my opinion again. Because these are things you could do with your friends or hang and get it for free. Because every blues musician learned the blues on their own. And every rock musician learned rock on their own. Every last one of them. So the system for learning, I think, and then I'll shut up because I'm talking, poor Scott passed up. And furthermore,
now, I would like to add something to that. It's really true, though, what he's saying is that there's a lot of schools that it's shocking that the first thing a student should want is to be criticized. to be shown what he's not doing right. They don't want that. They want to be praised, right? That's the wrong attitude to go to school for. It's like, I've had guys come to me that have been in school for as much as 6 months. They have all these licks, they have all these things. They can't pat their foot to a drum machine and keep it in time. They can't play quarter notes on upbeats and keep their foot tapping with a drum machine. I'm like, dude, what do you think you're going to be? You're not going to be a musician unless you learn how to do that. So it's amazing that he got through 6 months of school with no one telling him that, right? That's a big problem in education. You know, students need to be told what they're doing wrong and get it fixed at an early age. If they've got a time problem, if they've got an ear problem, it needs to be fixed before they can continue to want to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I find that a big problem in schools. Sometimes they ignore the individual student in favor of the classroom mentality. Okay, our job right now is to show you the C major scale. You learned the C major scale, we've done our jobs. Bullshit. They can learn a C major scale anywhere from a private teacher on their own, out of a book. They don't need to pay $300,000 to a school to learn that. You know, they need people that are qualified to teach them how to be real musicians.
And real music comes from an academic source of real music. It happened since we were kids. Matheny studied academically, Schofield studied academically, Mike Stern studied academically.
Great teachers.
With great teachers.
Yeah.
We all came to what...
Woodrick comes to mind?
Yeah.
Sure, he does.
He's a great educator, you know. And we try to follow in the footsteps of those educators who really know what they're doing, who know how to. I mean, believe me, you know, I've seen my share of teaching videos. Most of them are garbage.
Speaking of which, you have any plans of doing a new one?
Well, the thing with videos right now is not many people are giving advances for videos, so I don't want to do one with no advance. But I'm talking to somebody who might want to do it next year.
They need a bass player.
But yeah, you know, a lot of people tell me about my 2 teaching videos that, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying that I am a good teacher.
Right on.
But it's like, so many of the videos, especially the rock videos, are just like Joe Rockstar going up there and just going blah, 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 and then I do this, blah, 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 but they don't teach anything. They just show what they do. I break it down in an easy way that anybody can understand. Okay, you have this scale, you have this idea, and here's the idea, and this is how it's used in a sentence, just like you would be teaching a language. Here's the word, and here's how you use it in a sentence.
Right.
Your basic, you know, junior high school method of teaching, you know, so people can understand it, right? And people have come up to me and say, wow, your video, I've learned so much from your videos because they're so easy to understand. Because I'm not just showing off, I'm just trying to teach. And there's a big difference, you know, so there's a lot of teachers that just aren't qualified to be doing what they're doing. Just a good player does not a good teacher make, is basically what I'm saying.
Anything that you want to share with our viewers?
I agree with them. Ask your teachers if you're learning music. If you're not, don't study there. I don't mean any harm. I don't mean any disrespect. I mean, and my only interest is if students learn how to play better. That's the only thing that counts. That's the only thing that counts.
Thank you so much for your time. I understand.
You want some nuts?
Thanks.
I got nuts. You want some nuts?